Rowena Harlow had always known that her life was destined to remain hidden in the shadows, overshadowed by her glamorous stepsister, Eliza. For as long as she could remember, Eliza had effortlessly claimed the spotlight, beautiful, charismatic, ambitious, and dazzlingly popular. Rowena, quiet, unassuming, and gentle-hearted, had long resigned herself to a life away from attention, comfortable enough working quietly in a cozy bookstore tucked away on the outskirts of New York City. So, when the day finally came for Eliza to marry Theron Wilder, the enigmatic, notoriously private millionaire CEO of Reinhold Innovations, Rowena had no expectations of playing any role beyond a bridesmaid at the lavish ceremony set to dazzle the city's elite. But fate, as Rowena soon learned, had other plans. It was the morning of the wedding, and the luxurious bridal suite at the Plaza Hotel buzzed with frantic activity. Eliza's mother, Lorraine, paced anxiously back and forth, checking her phone every few seconds. Rowena stood quietly near the window, clad in a pale lilac dress, her blonde hair pinned up neatly, feeling completely out of place amidst the grandeur and chaos. Eliza was nowhere to be found. The bride had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a hastily scribbled note. "I'm sorry, I can't go through with this. Forgive me." Lorraine's face had drained of all color upon reading it, her manicured hands trembling visibly. Panic spread among the bridesmaids and wedding planners, whispers growing louder and more anxious. Guests were already gathering downstairs in the lavish ballroom, eagerly awaiting the appearance of the city's most talked-about bride and groom. Rowena, Lorraine suddenly turned to her stepdaughter, her voice wavering with desperation, eyes pleading as though her very life depended on it. "You must help us. Just wear the dress, walk down the aisle, stall the guests, just until we find Eliza. No one will notice. The veil is thick enough." Rowena stared at her in stunned disbelief. "Me? But, that's impossible. Theron will notice immediately." Lorraine gripped her arm tightly, desperation etched deeply into her perfectly powdered face. "He barely knows Eliza, this marriage was arranged as a business alliance. It's just for a few minutes. Please, Rowena. This will destroy our family if it gets out." Against her better judgment, feeling trapped by family obligation and an overwhelming sense of responsibility, Rowena reluctantly agreed. Minutes later, trembling and bewildered, she found herself slipping into her sister's lavish wedding gown, the ivory silk and lace feeling foreign against her skin. The gown, carefully tailored to Eliza's perfect figure, fit Rowena like a second skin, shockingly flattering her softer, more modest curves. She hardly recognized herself in the mirror, her reflection an ethereal stranger. With shaking fingers, Rowena lowered the delicate, ornate veil over her face, grateful that its intricate lace concealed her identity. Her heart thundered wildly beneath the gown's delicate bodice, anxiety twisting painfully in her stomach. She hoped desperately that Eliza would burst through the doors any second and put an end to this insane masquerade. But the doors remained stubbornly shut. When she finally stepped onto the red carpet leading down the grand staircase toward the lavishly decorated hall, Rowena's vision blurred momentarily. Hundreds of eyes watched her descend slowly, each step echoing in her ears like the pounding of her heart. She forced herself to breathe, counting each shaky inhale and exhale, terrified of stumbling. At the altar, beneath an archway woven with fragrant white roses, stood Theron Wilder himself. Rowena had seen him in countless magazines and news articles, tall, impeccably dressed, mysterious, and known to be ruthless in business. Yet nothing prepared her for the sheer magnetic power of his presence up close. His dark hair, perfectly groomed, framed an imposing, strikingly handsome face with sharp features, piercing steel-gray eyes, and a hard-set mouth betraying no emotion. But as she approached, Rowena noticed something unsettling in those eyes, a look so penetrating, so intense, it seemed to see straight through the veil, directly into her soul. Her pulse quickened dangerously, her body growing hot beneath the layers of silk and lace. When she reached his side, Theron extended his hand. She hesitated only for a heartbeat before placing her trembling fingers into his steady palm. His touch was unexpectedly warm, electrifying her nerves. "You seem nervous," Theron whispered, his voice smooth, deep, and dangerously calm. I'm just overwhelmed," Rowena responded softly, desperately trying to disguise her voice, hoping that nerves could mask the difference between herself and the self-assured Eliza. But Theron only gave her an enigmatic half-smile, a gesture which unsettled her even more deeply. As the ceremony began, Rowena's mind raced. Every passing second increased her desperation. Eliza still hadn't appeared. She was trapped, the lie stretching on dangerously. She glanced quickly toward Lorraine, who stood frozen, silently begging Rowena to continue the charade. The officiant reached the vows sooner than expected, and suddenly Rowena found herself trapped in a nightmare of her own making. "Do you, Theron Wilder, take this woman to be your lawful wife?" the officiant asked. "I do," Theron said without hesitation, his gaze fixed firmly on Rowena's veiled face, studying her reaction with unsettling scrutiny. "Do you, Eliza Harlow, take this man to be your lawful husband?" Rowena's heart raced in terror. She opened her mouth, words stuck painfully in her throat, yet before she could utter anything, Theron subtly tightened his grip on her hand, giving it a reassuring squeeze. Confusion filled her, her eyes widening beneath the veil. Did he know? She could feel Lorraine's pleading eyes burning into her back. With no choice left, Rowena forced out the words that would alter her destiny forever. I do." The officiant smiled warmly, oblivious to the tension in the air. "You may kiss your bride." Theron stepped forward, his fingers gently lifting the edge of the veil, revealing Rowena's face only to himself. Their eyes met in electrifying silence. Recognition flashed vividly in his gaze, confirming Rowena's worst fears. He knew exactly who she was. Yet, instead of shock or anger, a flicker of intrigue appeared in Theron's gaze, quickly replaced by calm, assured determination. He leaned in, his lips brushing softly against hers, briefly, yet sending a tremor of heat through her entire being. "Congratulations," he whispered softly, voice low enough for only Rowena to hear. "Now you're mine, Rowena." And in that terrifying, intoxicating moment, Rowena knew one thing for certain: this was far more than a simple mistake. She had just stepped into a trap set by a man whose intentions were far deeper, darker, and more compelling than she could have ever imagined. The lavish ballroom echoed with applause, laughter, and crystal glasses clinking in endless toasts, yet Rowena felt utterly alone amidst the luxurious chaos. She stood at the center of the grand hall next to Theron, smiling stiffly for photos, conscious of every pair of curious eyes scrutinizing her. To the hundreds of high society guests, she was now Mrs. Theron Wilder, wife to one of New York's most enigmatic billionaires, but inside, Rowena was on the verge of collapsing under the weight of her secret. Theron's strong arm remained possessively wrapped around her waist as they navigated through waves of well-wishers, influential businessmen, and elegantly dressed socialites. Rowena could barely breathe beneath her perfect facade, heart pounding painfully with anxiety. Every passing moment intensified her fear that someone would realize she was an imposter, merely the sister of the woman Theron was supposed to marry. Finally, when the celebrations had grown too overwhelming, Theron leaned close, his voice low and authoritative. "Let's go. You've done enough." His words were firm yet oddly gentle, surprising Rowena. He effortlessly guided her out of the crowded hall, through marble corridors, and into a private elevator, far from the prying eyes of New York's elite. The elevator doors slid closed, sealing them in silence. Alone at last, Rowena dared a glance at the man who now held her fate in his hands. Theron stood calm, imposing, hands resting in his pockets, eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle nervously. Unable to endure the silence, Rowena finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper, tinged with anxiety and confusion. "You knew all along, didn't you?" Theron's lips curved slowly into a faint, unreadable smile, eyes glinting with mysterious amusement. "Yes, Rowena. I knew from the moment you stepped into that hall that you weren't Eliza." Rowena stared at him in shock, heart racing faster as 1,000 questions flooded her mind. Then why didn't you say something? Why did you go through with it? Theron tilted his head slightly, studying her intently. Your sister's disappearance complicated things, but your arrival presented a different kind of opportunity. Opportunity? She echoed faintly, eyes wide. Indeed, Theron answered calmly. Eliza and I had an agreement, purely business. But you offer something far more interesting. Rowena felt her cheeks flush warmly, anger and confusion mixing dangerously inside her. She lifted her chin defiantly, despite the fear fluttering in her stomach. I'm not some pawn in your games. Theron took a measured step toward her, closing the gap between them with deliberate slowness, his presence overwhelming. Yet you chose to stand at the altar and marry me. You had your chance to run. But you stayed. Why? Rowena swallowed hard, her voice wavering. My mother begged me. I only agreed because. You agreed, Theron interrupted softly but firmly. No excuses. You made your choice, Rowena. Before she could reply, the elevator doors slid open, revealing a stunning penthouse suite high above the glittering lights of Manhattan. Rowena stared in astonishment at the luxurious expanse of polished marble, sleek glass, and modern elegance spread out before her. Theron stepped past her smoothly, removing his jacket with practiced ease, clearly at home in this place of wealth and refined taste. He turned back to face her, eyes piercing and unreadable once again. Welcome home. Rowena remained frozen at the threshold, overwhelmed by the surreal situation she found herself trapped in. Her pulse thundered frantically as reality sank in. This isn't my home, she whispered shakily, tears threatening to blur her vision. This is all a terrible mistake. Theron moved toward her with unexpected swiftness, his hand gently grasping her wrist, pulling her into the suite. Mistake or fate, you're here now, and I'm not inclined to let you leave. Rowena inhaled sharply, stunned by the conviction in his voice. What do you want from me, Theron? His expression softened unexpectedly, though his eyes remained guarded. For starters, honesty. Something your sister wasn't particularly good at. She pulled her wrist from his gentle grasp, stepping back defensively. I'm not Eliza. I'm not sophisticated or glamorous. I'm just, me. An ordinary girl who belongs in a quiet bookstore, not in this place, not in your world. Theron tilted his head again, his gaze softening even further, becoming almost curious. You underestimate yourself, Rowena. Ordinary women don't agree to marry men they barely know, stepping willingly into dangerous territory. You intrigue me far more than Eliza ever could. Her heart skipped erratically at the sincerity in his words. Yet suspicion remained. But why? Why me? He hesitated for a fraction of a second before his voice lowered, becoming deeper, softer. Because when I saw you beneath that veil, I saw someone genuine. Someone real. And that's something rare in my world. Rowena felt her breath catch at the vulnerability hidden beneath his confident exterior. Suddenly, Theron Wilder was no longer just a ruthless millionaire, he was a complex, deeply enigmatic man with secrets of his own. Theron stepped closer once more, and this time Rowena did not retreat. He slowly reached up, his fingertips lightly tracing the curve of her cheek, sending an electric sensation down her spine. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow we'll discuss your future, and your sister's sudden disappearance. Eliza? Rowena whispered, startled. Do you know where she is? Theron's eyes darkened slightly, a shadow passing briefly across his features. I don't yet, but I suspect there's more to her disappearance than cold feet. A chill ran through Rowena at the implication of danger in his voice. What do you mean? Just trust me, he said, pulling back slightly, expression again masked in calm control. For tonight, you're safe. Tomorrow we'll begin unraveling everything else. Exhausted and emotionally overwhelmed, Rowena finally nodded in reluctant acceptance. All right, she agreed quietly. Theron gave her a faint smile of approval, guiding her gently toward a lavish guest bedroom. At the door, he paused, eyes searching hers deeply once more. "I promise, Rowena, I'll protect you. But understand something clearly, you're mine now, and that isn't negotiable." The door closed softly, leaving Rowena alone in the opulent silence of her new life. Her heart raced, emotions tangled in confusion, fear, and a disturbing excitement she could not deny. Theron Wilder was unlike anyone she had ever known, dangerous, powerful, yet strangely protective. And even though she knew he was playing a dangerous game, Rowena couldn't help but feel an undeniable pull toward him. She stepped toward the large window overlooking the glittering lights of the city below, aware that her old life had vanished forever. For better or worse, she now belonged in Theron Wilder's world, and there was no turning back. Morning sunlight flooded into the spacious bedroom, pulling Rowena slowly from a restless sleep. Her eyes fluttered open, disoriented at first by the luxurious surroundings, far grander than anything she'd ever known. The enormous bed, draped in delicate ivory silk sheets, felt foreign yet decadently comfortable. As she sat up, reality swept in sharply. She was no longer in her modest Brooklyn apartment, but in Theron Wilder's opulent Manhattan penthouse, officially married to one of New York's wealthiest and most elusive men. Yesterday's events rushed back with dizzying clarity. Her sister's disappearance, the forced masquerade, Theron's unsettling admission that he'd known the truth all along. Rowena exhaled shakily, glancing toward the large window overlooking the glittering skyline. The city below bustled as usual, oblivious to the surreal drama playing out behind closed doors. Rowena slipped from beneath the sheets, her bare feet sinking softly into the plush rug as she approached the large mirror on the opposite wall. Her reflection gazed back, tousled golden hair tumbling around her shoulders, blue eyes shadowed with worry and exhaustion. She hardly recognized herself, even as the memory of Theron's quiet promise echoed vividly in her mind. "You're mine now, and that isn't negotiable." A sudden knock startled her, pulling her from troubling thoughts. Before she could answer, the bedroom door slowly opened, and a young woman in a neat uniform stepped inside, offering a polite smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Wilder. Mr. Wilder asked me to assist you." "I'm Lena, your personal assistant," she introduced herself calmly. Rowena hesitated, discomfort by the unexpected luxury. "Please, just call me Rowena," she corrected gently. "I'm not used to any of this yet." Lena smiled warmly, clearly sensing Rowena's unease. "I understand. Mr. Wilder thought you might need help adjusting. He's already left for the office, but he asked that you join him there later." "Join him?" Rowena echoed nervously. "Yes," Lena confirmed. "He specifically requested you arrive by noon. Apparently, you have a luncheon appointment." Anxiety twisted in Rowena's stomach, but she merely nodded, forcing herself to accept the surreal situation without immediate resistance. Lena showed her to the expansive dressing room, filled wall-to-wall with luxurious clothes, designer gowns, elegant cocktail dresses, casual outfits, shoes, bags, all carefully selected for someone like Eliza, not Rowena. Feeling overwhelmed, she chose a simple, pale blue dress, refusing to pretend she was someone she wasn't. 2 hours later, standing in front of the gleaming skyscraper housing Reinhold Innovations, Rowena's heart raced. The enormous glass and steel structure towered imposingly over the bustling street, an undeniable symbol of Theron's power. Taking a deep breath, she walked through the sleek lobby, feeling dozens of curious eyes following her every move as she stepped into a private elevator guarded by security personnel who recognized her immediately. As the elevator smoothly ascended to the top floor, her pulse quickened further. She realized she'd soon be face to face with Theron again, unsure whether the dread or anticipation made her heart beat faster. When the doors opened directly into Theron's vast office suite, Rowena found him standing by the enormous panoramic windows overlooking the city. Tall and imposing, he wore a flawlessly tailored charcoal gray suit, perfectly highlighting his broad shoulders and commanding presence. Theron turned slowly, his eyes immediately fixing on hers, intense and unreadable. "Rowena," he greeted, voice smooth and controlled, stepping forward to meet her. "You look lovely." "Thank you," she murmured awkwardly, feeling inexplicably shy beneath his penetrating gaze. "Sit down," he said, guiding her gently to a plush leather chair opposite his impressive desk. She obeyed, nervous yet curious about why he had summoned her here. Theron leaned against the edge of his desk, observing her closely, his expression still guarded. "We need to discuss your sister." Rowena tensed instantly, anxiety surging. "Did you find her? Is she safe?" Theron's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing an edge of irritation at the mention of Eliza. "Not yet. But my people have leads indicating her disappearance wasn't simply a case of pre-wedding jitters." Rowena's heart twisted painfully. "Then what happened?" He hesitated briefly, as if choosing his words carefully. "It seems Eliza was working with someone else, someone intent on damaging both my reputation and my company." Rowena paled, feeling suddenly faint. "Are you accusing her of betrayal?" Theron's expression darkened further, shadows flickering in his intense gray eyes. "I'm stating facts. Eliza was never interested in marriage for its own sake. She had other motives. And whoever she's working with is dangerous." Fear washed over Rowena. Her sister could be many things, ambitious, reckless, but outright betrayal seemed unimaginable. Yet Theron's absolute certainty unsettled her deeply. "Why are you telling me this?" she finally whispered. "Because," Theron said, voice lowering dangerously, "you may now be a target yourself. By taking your sister's place, you've stepped directly into harm's way." She inhaled sharply, panic rising. "Then why didn't you let me leave? Why marry me at all?" He regarded her silently, his eyes softening slightly. "Because you're safer by my side than anywhere else." Rowena stared at him in confusion, feeling unexpectedly vulnerable beneath the intensity of his gaze. "Theron, what exactly did Eliza have against you?" He paused, jaw tightening slightly, before finally admitting in a carefully measured tone, "She uncovered something from my past, something painful, deeply personal, something I've spent years burying." A tense silence fell between them, Rowena watching him carefully, sensing the pain concealed beneath his formidable composure. "Can you tell me?" she asked softly, instinctively reaching for the human connection beneath his guarded exterior. His eyes flickered briefly with surprise, vulnerability breaking through for just a second before vanishing again behind his carefully constructed mask. "Not now," he finally answered quietly. "But maybe someday." The sincerity in his voice startled her. For the first time, Rowena saw the man behind the ruthless CEO facade, a man struggling privately, hiding his wounds from the world. Before she could speak further, the intercom buzzed sharply, interrupting the fragile intimacy. "Mr. Wilder, your luncheon guests have arrived," announced a polite voice. Theron straightened immediately, mask firmly back in place. He offered Rowena a reassuring half-smile. "We'll continue later. For now, I need you to trust me." Feeling strangely reassured yet more confused than ever, Rowena nodded, following Theron as he led her into an adjacent private dining room, where influential business associates awaited them. She slipped effortlessly into the role of Theron's wife, noticing the curious glances, whispered questions, and covert assessments that swirled around her. Throughout lunch, Theron's attention rarely left her. His eyes tracked her every subtle movement, each reassuring glance sending warmth cascading through her veins. She felt increasingly aware of him, not just as her husband on paper but as a deeply magnetic man who fascinated and unsettled her. By the end of the luncheon, Rowena felt exhausted, emotionally drained yet irresistibly drawn deeper into Theron's world. As their guests departed, Theron gently touched her back, guiding her back into his office. He closed the door quietly, locking out the outside world. "Thank you," he murmured softly, his gaze intense and appreciative. "For what?" she whispered uncertainly. "For being exactly who you are," Theron replied, stepping closer, his voice low and profoundly intimate. Honest, brave, genuine. Their eyes met in a charged silence. Slowly, he reached up, fingertips tracing her jawline, sending sparks of electricity dancing beneath her skin. His touch was gentle, yet possessive, leaving no doubt of the undeniable attraction simmering between them. Despite the uncertainty surrounding them, Rowena realized one thing clearly in that moment: being Theron Wilder's wife might have begun as a dangerous charade, but it was quickly becoming something infinitely more real, and infinitely more dangerous to her heart. Nightfall had settled over the city, wrapping Manhattan's glittering skyline in a cloak of velvety darkness punctuated by thousands of shimmering lights. Back at the penthouse, Rowena sat curled up on a luxurious ivory sofa, staring blankly at the mesmerizing view, unable to escape the unease gnawing at her insides. She felt trapped, suspended between reality and a world that had suddenly become impossibly complicated. Theron hadn't yet returned home, and Rowena found herself unexpectedly restless, her thoughts spiraling endlessly around the revelations of the day. Eliza's disappearance, the looming threat, and Theron's mysterious past, everything overwhelmed her with uncertainty. The penthouse, though opulent and beautiful, felt achingly empty in his absence. As she rose to pace, a sudden, insistent knocking at the door interrupted her tangled thoughts. Startled, Rowena froze, pulse quickening. Security had assured her no one unauthorized could access their floor, yet the knocking grew louder, more urgent. Hesitantly, she moved toward the door, peering cautiously through the security monitor. The screen showed a face she never expected to see again so soon. Eliza stood impatiently outside, perfectly groomed, elegantly dressed, and glaring into the camera with fierce, impatient eyes. Rowena's heart leaped into her throat, disbelief and relief surging simultaneously. Without thinking, she quickly unlocked the door, flinging it open. Eliza stormed inside, barely glancing at her sister as she swept past, radiating confidence and anger. "Eliza! Thank God you're safe. Where have you been?" Rowena exclaimed, rushing after her sister into the living room, desperate for answers. Eliza spun around sharply, her beautiful features twisted with barely contained rage. "Safe? Really, Rowena? Is that all you have to say after stealing my wedding day?" Rowena recoiled, stunned by the harshness in her sister's voice. "What are you talking about? You disappeared. I only stepped in because Mom begged me. I never wanted any of this." "Oh, please." Eliza scoffed bitterly, her tone dripping with contempt. "You seized your chance to finally step out of my shadow. You took everything that belonged to me, including Theron." "That's not true," Rowena protested vehemently, feeling anger stir within her. "I didn't choose this. I didn't choose Theron." "But he chose you," Eliza interrupted coldly, eyes narrowing accusingly. "I saw it with my own eyes, the way he looks at you. Like you're some precious, delicate thing. He never looked at me like that." Confusion clouded Rowena's expression as she struggled to understand her sister's jealousy. "Eliza, why did you run away in the first place?" Eliza laughed bitterly, walking toward the window and looking out over the glittering city. Her voice softened briefly, betraying vulnerability. "Theron never loved me. Our marriage was purely business, a deal. But I wanted more. I thought leaving him at the altar would force his hand, make him realize he needed me. Instead, you took my place and ruined everything." Rowena stared at her sister in shock. "You manipulated everyone just to control him? Eliza, that's cruel." "Cruel?" Eliza spun around furiously, eyes flashing dangerously. "Cruel is what Theron did to me, agreeing to marry me without even pretending he cared. Cruel is you, my sister, taking the one thing that should have been mine." "Eliza, stop!" Rowena shouted desperately, her voice trembling. "I never wanted your life. All I've ever wanted was to stay out of your way, but you dragged me into this mess. Theron knows everything, about your betrayal, about your involvement with someone plotting against him. A shadow passed over Eliza's face, her eyes widening slightly before quickly masking the emotion. He told you that? Yes, Rowena said, her voice quieter but firm. He knows you're working with someone dangerous. Whoever it is, Eliza, you need to stop. It's gone too far. Eliza's eyes flickered briefly with fear before narrowing again defiantly. It's not that simple. You don't know who Theron really is, Rowena. He hides things you wouldn't believe. What do you mean? Rowena demanded sharply, anxiety tightening her chest. Eliza hesitated, clearly torn between anger and fear, before finally relenting. He had a fiancée once, a long time ago. Her name was Alina. She died tragically, some say mysteriously, and it nearly destroyed him. It's the secret he's desperately tried to hide. That's the leverage I had, the only power I held over him. Rowena felt a chill run down her spine at the revelation. You blackmailed him about a tragedy from his past. How could you be so heartless, Eliza? Her sister's expression hardened again, defiant. Because that was the only way to make him notice me. I didn't count on him actually falling for you. You, quiet, timid little Rowena, who was never supposed to be noticed. The cruel words cut deeply, and Rowena felt tears stinging her eyes. But before she could reply, the front door swung open sharply, and Theron stood framed in the doorway, expression dark, controlled, and dangerously calm. His presence filled the room instantly, tension thickening palpably. Eliza, Theron's voice was cold and cutting, eyes narrowing dangerously. You shouldn't have come here. Eliza turned defiantly, chin raised. Theron, it's not over. You think you can discard me and marry my sister without consequences? I still have the power to ruin you. Theron stepped forward menacingly, his voice dangerously soft. No, you don't. Whatever power you thought you had vanished the moment you decided to play games. Leave, before I involve security. Eliza's eyes widened slightly, momentarily afraid of Theron's coldness. Yet pride won out. She glanced back at Rowena, disdain flickering once more in her eyes. You'll regret this, both of you. With one last scathing glare, she swept past Theron and disappeared through the open door, leaving behind silence thick with unresolved tension. Rowena stood frozen, heart pounding, as Theron slowly approached her. His expression softened slightly, eyes searching her face. Are you all right? She nodded shakily, her voice barely audible. She said things, about your past. Theron's jaw tightened noticeably, his eyes turning guarded again. Eliza likes to twist the truth to her advantage. But she wasn't lying entirely. I did lose someone I loved deeply. Rowena hesitated, then softly asked, what happened? Theron's expression clouded with pain he'd clearly kept hidden for years. Alina died in an accident, or so it appeared. But I've always suspected foul play. It destroyed me. I vowed never to let anyone close again. Until now. Rowena's heart twisted painfully at the vulnerability in his words. She stepped closer, instinctively reaching out to gently touch his arm. Theron. He flinched subtly at her touch, clearly unused to comfort. Yet he didn't pull away, allowing the intimacy. Their eyes met, locked in a moment of shared pain and understanding. Theron slowly raised his hand, brushing a strand of hair gently from her face, his voice raw, unguarded. I never intended for you to become entangled in this mess. But now you're here, and I won't lose you, not to Eliza, not to anyone. Rowena felt her pulse quicken beneath his touch, warmth flooding her chest despite the turmoil surrounding them. She knew she should resist, protect herself, but she couldn't. Not now, not with Theron Wilder standing before her, finally vulnerable. I'm not going anywhere, she whispered, voice trembling slightly. I'm here, Theron. Relief softened his features for a brief, fleeting moment before his eyes darkened with fierce possessiveness, pulling her gently closer. He cupped her face tenderly, thumb brushing softly along her cheek. "You are mine," he murmured deeply, voice low, intimately possessive. "And I'll fight anyone, anything, that tries to take you from me." In that powerful, charged moment, Rowena surrendered completely, accepting that whatever danger lay ahead, she was bound irrevocably to Theron. And even though shadows from the past still haunted them both, she knew deep down she had already crossed a line from which there was no return. Days passed slowly, each filled with tense silence punctuated only by Theron's brief, reassuring touches and lingering gazes. Though their fragile intimacy continued to deepen, Rowena could sense something heavy still weighed on him, unspoken secrets pressing between them. Since Eliza's unexpected appearance, Theron had doubled security, making Rowena increasingly aware of the danger that shadowed her every step. One rainy afternoon, as dark storm clouds swept over Manhattan, Rowena stood quietly by the penthouse window, watching raindrops streak across the glass. She shivered slightly, pulling her cardigan tighter around her shoulders, lost in thought. She felt trapped yet oddly safe, a prisoner in a luxurious cage designed by Theron to keep danger out, but also to keep her securely inside. The buzzing of her phone startled her from reverie. Glancing down, she saw an unfamiliar number flashing insistently across the screen. Heart suddenly racing, she cautiously answered, voice quiet and wary. "Hello." A smooth, unfamiliar male voice spoke immediately. "Miss Harlow, Mrs. Wilder now, isn't it? I think it's time we had a conversation." Her stomach dropped, fear tightening painfully. "Who is this?" "A friend of your sister's," the voice replied calmly, a sinister undercurrent beneath the politeness. "Eliza mentioned you were a reasonable person. Perhaps we could come to an arrangement." Rowena's pulse pounded frantically as she struggled to maintain composure. "What arrangement? What do you want?" "A meeting," the stranger continued coolly. "If you refuse, I'm afraid certain, unpleasant information about your husband might surface publicly." She swallowed hard, anxiety sharpening into determination. "Tell me your name first." A pause stretched, then a low chuckle echoed softly. "Call me Alexander Vaughn. I'm sure Theron knows me well enough." Before she could respond, the line went dead, leaving her trembling and terrified. Rowena's mind raced frantically. Should she tell Theron? Would it endanger him further if she didn't? The stranger's threat echoed ominously. There was clearly more to Theron's past than he'd shared. When Theron returned that evening, exhaustion etched deeply into his handsome features, Rowena couldn't contain her anxiety. She approached him hesitantly, heart hammering. "Theron," she began softly, "I received a call today. From someone named Alexander Vaughn." Instantly, Theron's expression darkened dangerously, eyes narrowing in barely contained fury. "Alexander Vaughn called you directly?" She nodded nervously, seeing his sudden anger clearly. "He threatened to expose information about you unless I agreed to meet with him." Theron stepped closer, his posture rigid, voice dangerously calm. "What exactly did he say?" "He mentioned Eliza," Rowena admitted quietly, eyes searching his tense features. "He called himself her friend, but I sense there's more." Theron exhaled sharply, jaw tightening visibly. "Vaughn is no friend. He's a ruthless competitor and my enemy for years. He's the one responsible for the incident that killed Alina." Rowena's breath caught sharply. "Alexander Vaughn caused Alina's death?" "Yes," Theron whispered harshly, pain flickering briefly through his eyes. "The authorities could never prove his involvement, but I've always known the truth. Vaughn wanted to break me, and nearly succeeded. Now he's after you, using Eliza's betrayal to strike again." Fear chilled her bones, yet she stepped closer, reaching out to touch his hand gently. "Theron, what exactly happened to Alina?" He hesitated, visibly conflicted before finally speaking quietly. "Alina and I were engaged. She was warm, loving, the opposite of everyone else around me at that time. Vaughn saw her as my weakness. He sabotaged her car. It looked like a tragic accident, but I found evidence linking Vaughn. Without proof, my hands were tied. I've spent years fighting him, but now he's escalated his attacks again. She shivered, heart aching for him. What should we do? Theron cupped her face tenderly, determination hardening his voice. You do nothing. I'll handle Vaughn. Stay here, promise me you won't leave or agree to meet him. But Theron. He silenced her gently with a finger against her lips. Promise me, Rowena. I can't lose you. Not like Alina. Not again. Her throat tightened painfully, emotions overwhelming. She nodded silently, promising softly, I'll stay. Yet when Theron left for his office early the next morning, something in Rowena stirred restlessly. The memory of Vaughn's threats tormented her relentlessly. She couldn't just sit idly, powerless and waiting for another tragedy. Determined to confront the threat directly, Rowena secretly called Vaughn back, agreeing to meet him briefly that afternoon in Central Park, aware she was risking everything. Rain still drizzled lightly as she nervously waited beneath a secluded gazebo near the lake. Moments later, footsteps echoed, and Alexander Vaughn appeared from the shadows, impeccably dressed, handsome, yet his cold eyes revealed something deeply sinister beneath his polished exterior. Rowena, Vaughn greeted smoothly, eyes narrowing with malicious amusement. Brave of you to come alone. She steadied herself, voice firm despite fear. What do you want from Theron? Vaughn smirked coldly, approaching slowly. Theron took everything from me once, my reputation, my empire. Destroying him now is simply repayment. Your sister's cooperation was helpful, but your involvement makes this even sweeter. Eliza betrayed Theron for you. Rowena gasped, heart sinking further. Eliza betrayed Theron for her own reasons, Vaughn corrected smoothly. She wanted his love, I promised her leverage. But Theron's love isn't easily won, is it? Unless it's genuine. Which brings us to you. Theron seemed surprisingly invested, far more than he ever was with Alina. Rowena paled, sensing the implicit threat. You won't hurt Theron again. Vaughn's eyes flashed dangerously. It's too late. Theron Wilder will fall, and you'll be the weapon that destroys him. Before Rowena could react, two men appeared suddenly from the trees, grabbing her arms tightly. She screamed, struggling desperately, but Vaughn simply stepped back, smiling coldly. Don't worry. You'll be safe, for now. But Theron will finally experience true suffering, knowing I hold your life in my hands. Dragged toward a dark SUV parked on a hidden path, Rowena felt hopeless panic consuming her. As her captors pushed her inside, she glimpsed Vaughn's chilling smile one final time before darkness enveloped her completely. Hours later, locked alone in a stark, windowless room somewhere unknown, Rowena curled up shivering, desperate tears sliding down her cheeks. She realized how reckless she'd been, how deeply she'd underestimated Vaughn's ruthless cruelty. Yet, even trapped and frightened, her thoughts returned stubbornly to Theron. She imagined the anguish he'd feel discovering her betrayal, her broken promise. Regret and fear tightened painfully in her chest, but beneath the despair flickered something else, determination to survive, to escape somehow, and find her way back to Theron. She whispered a prayer into the darkness, knowing her only hope lay in the man she'd come to love against all logic. And as she drifted into exhausted sleep, she clung fiercely to the belief that Theron Wilder wouldn't rest until he found her, even if it meant unleashing every ounce of his power and fury upon Alexander Vaughn. Theron Wilder's world shattered the moment he learned Rowena had vanished. As soon as security footage revealed she'd willingly left the penthouse and entered an unknown vehicle, his heart sank into a cold, familiar dread. The same feeling he'd experienced once before, years ago, when Alina's life had been brutally taken from him. But this time, Theron was determined the ending would be different. He immediately mobilized his security teams, launched investigations, and even brought in trusted connections within law enforcement to quietly search every corner of New York. Yet each passing hour with no news fueled his growing desperation and rage. He knew precisely who had taken Rowena, and why. Alexander Vaughn had finally declared open war. Locked in his penthouse office, Theron paced like a caged animal, fists clenched in fury as he reviewed footage, desperate for clues he'd missed. His phone buzzed constantly with updates, none bringing relief. The room, usually a calm sanctuary of order and power, now felt suffocating, mocking him with its emptiness. A sudden knock interrupted his spiraling thoughts. Lena, Rowena's personal assistant, stepped inside cautiously, carrying a small envelope. "Mr. Wilder, this was left downstairs at reception for you, no sender listed," she said nervously. Theron immediately tore open the envelope, fingers trembling with barely restrained anger. Inside lay a single photograph of Rowena, pale and frightened, seated in a stark room he didn't recognize. On the back, Vaughn's unmistakable handwriting taunted him. "This is only the beginning. You took everything from me, I'll return the favor." His fury exploded instantly, sending his fist crashing violently onto the desk. Lena flinched, terrified at witnessing his sudden loss of control. "Leave," Theron commanded hoarsely, voice shaking with rage. Lena quickly obeyed, leaving him alone once more in agonizing silence. Theron gripped the photo tightly, pain slicing through him at the sight of Rowena's frightened eyes. He realized with bitter clarity that Vaughn had exploited her innocence and his own failure to fully protect her. Now, Rowena's safety depended entirely upon him, not as a CEO, but as the ruthless man he'd once been, capable of fighting back without mercy. Determined, he swiftly activated contacts he hadn't reached out to in years, powerful individuals operating beyond the law, allies forged in darkness from his earlier life. Within hours, Theron received intelligence pinpointing Vaughn's possible location, a hidden property on Long Island. Armed security was heavy, but Theron didn't hesitate. He assembled his own team of former military operatives, men who knew loyalty and danger equally well. As they drove silently toward the isolated estate under cover of darkness, Theron felt the relentless surge of adrenaline, the dark, primal fury that had once made him unstoppable. This time, he wouldn't hesitate. He would protect Rowena at any cost, consequences be damned. When they finally arrived at the sprawling estate, Theron's men efficiently disabled security cameras and neutralized perimeter guards. Under cover of shadows, Theron himself led the final push into the mansion, driven by one singular thought, saving the woman he'd sworn he wouldn't lose. The sprawling interior was eerily quiet. Theron moved swiftly through darkened corridors, heart pounding with anticipation. Nearing a locked basement door, he signaled his men silently. Seconds later, the door exploded inward with a controlled blast, echoing through the halls. Theron charged inside first, gun raised, his presence radiating lethal danger. Inside the dim room, Rowena sat curled up in the corner, startled awake by the explosion, eyes wide with shock and relief. "Theron," she gasped, scrambling to her feet, voice breaking with overwhelming emotion. He crossed the room in seconds, pulling her fiercely into his arms, feeling her tremble violently against his chest. "Rowena," he whispered roughly, emotion choking his voice, relief flooding him so intensely he nearly lost his composure. "Thank God." "I'm sorry," she sobbed, clinging desperately to him. "I never meant to." "Shoo," he murmured soothingly, brushing her tangled hair gently. "You're safe now. Nothing else matters." Yet the sound of slow, mocking applause interrupted their reunion sharply. Theron spun protectively, shielding Rowena behind him as Alexander Vaughn appeared from the shadows, calm, unarmed, confident in his ruthless calculation. "Impressive, Theron," Vaughn drawled coldly. "Though I expected nothing less from you." "You're finished, Vaughn," Theron growled dangerously, eyes blazing. "You crossed the line." Vaughn smirked, clearly unbothered. "You crossed it first, years ago. Alina's death wasn't personal, you know, just business. You took my empire, I took something precious from you. We're even." Theron's rage surged, but he restrained himself, aware that Vaughn's confidence meant something was still dangerously amiss. We'll never be even. Alina was innocent, just like Rowena. Your feud was always with me. Exactly, Vaughn agreed coldly. But since you chose to involve another innocent woman in our war, I decided she should share Alina's fate. Theron lunged instantly, grabbing Vaughn roughly by his collar, slamming him violently against the wall. I should kill you right now, he hissed furiously. Vaughn only laughed bitterly, voice strained yet mocking. Then do it. But if you kill me now, you'll lose everything. Eliza made sure of that. Theron hesitated briefly, jaw tightening. What does Eliza have to do with this? She recorded a rather detailed confession, Vaughn sneered triumphantly. If I disappear or die tonight, it'll be released instantly. The world will know Theron Wilder as a ruthless criminal who built his empire on secrets, intimidation, even murder. Rowena gasped sharply, horrified. Theron's grip tightened dangerously around Vaughn's throat, his voice trembling with restrained fury. You can't win this. I already have, Vaughn whispered coldly, eyes glittering maliciously. Release me, and maybe you'll salvage something. Theron hesitated, torn between revenge and protecting Rowena. But as he met Rowena's frightened gaze, clarity settled painfully. Slowly, reluctantly, he released Vaughn, shoving him away in disgust. Get out, Theron spat venomously. But understand this, if you come near Rowena again, nothing will stop me from killing you. Vaughn adjusted his collar calmly, sneering smugly as he retreated slowly toward the door. We'll see, Theron. This isn't over. After Vaughn disappeared, Theron turned slowly toward Rowena, expression dark with bitter defeat. She moved immediately to comfort him, wrapping her arms tightly around his waist. Theron, what are we going to do? He cupped her face tenderly, eyes shadowed with regret. I'll handle whatever comes next, but I can't risk your safety again. She shook her head firmly, eyes blazing determinedly. We face this together, whatever it takes. He hesitated, deeply moved by her courage, then slowly nodded, finally allowing himself hope. Together, he agreed softly, holding her fiercely, praying silently it would be enough to withstand the coming storm. As they left Vaughn's mansion behind, Theron knew their battle had only begun. But Rowena's unwavering strength beside him was the only force he needed. Alexander Vaughn might have temporarily escaped justice, but Theron vowed fiercely that next time, no threat, blackmail, or secrets would stop him from protecting Rowena, no matter the cost that in the days following Rowena's rescue, life became a fragile balancing act between cautious normality and mounting dread. Theron tightened security around their penthouse even further, now operating with almost militant precision, but the danger remained painfully real. Vaughn's threat of exposing Theron's secrets lingered like an ominous storm cloud, poised to devastate their lives at any moment. Rowena refused to be sidelined, insisting on being at Theron's side despite his repeated attempts to shelter her. They both knew Eliza's involvement complicated everything, her betrayal had been absolute, recorded and ready to destroy them both. If Eliza leaked that damaging confession, Theron stood to lose everything, his company, his reputation, and possibly his freedom. One crisp autumn afternoon, as leaves drifted through Central Park, painting the city in gold and crimson hues, Theron and Rowena waited anxiously inside his office at Reinhold Innovations. Theron stood rigidly at the window, jaw set tight with tension, while Rowena sat nervously nearby, heart pounding with anticipation. Moments later, the elevator doors slid open silently, revealing Eliza herself, elegantly poised, calm, and disturbingly confident. Theron's cold stare tracked her as she entered slowly, glancing dismissively at Rowena before turning her full attention to him. You summoned me, Theron? Eliza asked coolly, smirking faintly. I assume you're ready to negotiate. Sit down, Eliza, Theron ordered coldly, indicating a chair opposite his desk. His voice was tightly controlled, masking barely restrained fury. Eliza complied, gracefully settling herself and crossing her legs with practiced indifference. Rowena's stomach churned, anger surging at her sister's arrogance despite the chaos she'd caused. Theron leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing dangerously. "What exactly do you hope to gain from betraying me?" Eliza's smile widened slightly, mockingly innocent. "You never saw me as anything more than a business arrangement. Why shouldn't I profit from your coldness? Vaughn offered me leverage, you offered me nothing." Theron's jaw clenched tightly. "So, your revenge is destroying both our lives?" Eliza shrugged casually. "You destroyed mine first. All I ever wanted was to matter to you. But now it's too late." "You never loved Theron," Rowena interrupted suddenly, voice trembling with anger. "You loved his power, his status. You'd have betrayed him regardless." Eliza's gaze turned icy, contemptuous. "Careful, Rowena. You've stolen enough already. Don't pretend you understand my motives." Theron cut through their argument sharply, voice commanding and deadly calm. "Enough. Eliza, what do you want in exchange for not releasing the recording?" Her smile grew cold, victorious. "You resign from Reinhold Innovations immediately, publicly announcing your withdrawal. Then, you sign control over to me. Completely." Rowena gasped softly, eyes widening in horror. Theron remained silent for a tense moment, weighing his options carefully. "And if I refuse?" Theron finally asked quietly. Eliza smirked, eyes glinting dangerously. "Then I ruin you completely. Vaughn's prepared to go public, revealing every dark detail. You'll lose everything, your empire, your freedom, even Rowena. Is your pride worth all that?" Rowena watched anxiously as Theron's eyes darkened further, his fists clenching subtly in frustration. Finally, he straightened, voice quietly resolute. "You've underestimated me," Theron said softly, coldly. "I don't surrender, not to Vaughn, and certainly not to you." Eliza laughed mockingly, rising elegantly from her seat. "Then brace yourself for what's coming. You'll regret this, Theron." She swept toward the elevator, radiating smug certainty. But just as she pressed the button, Rowena abruptly stood, confronting her sister boldly. "Eliza, wait." Eliza paused, glaring impatiently. "What is it, Rowena?" Rowena's heart raced, but determination strengthened her voice. "You're making a mistake. Vaughn doesn't care about you. He's using you. If you release that recording, you'll destroy yourself along with us." Eliza's expression flickered momentarily, uncertainty breaking through briefly. "I'm doing what I have to." "No," Rowena insisted fiercely, stepping closer. "You have a choice right now. Choose your family, choose loyalty. Please, Eliza. Stop this before it's too late." For a brief second, genuine conflict flashed across Eliza's eyes. Yet her pride quickly returned, hardening her gaze once more. Without another word, she turned away, stepping into the elevator. As the doors closed, Rowena felt a chilling certainty: her sister had made her decision. Afterward, silence hung heavily between Theron and Rowena. He approached her slowly, expression dark with worry. "You shouldn't have intervened," he murmured gently. "I had to try," she whispered softly, leaning into his comforting embrace. "Theron, what happens now?" He held her tightly, breathing deeply as he struggled with the painful truth. "Now, we fight." Within hours, the threat became reality. Eliza's damaging recording flooded the media, unleashing a storm of controversy. Headlines screamed accusations, allegations of corporate sabotage, fraud, blackmail, and even Theron's potential involvement in Alina's suspicious death. Overnight, Theron Wilder's pristine image crumbled into scandal, his empire shaken to its core. Yet, instead of succumbing to despair, Theron faced the storm with grim resolve. Holding a press conference the next morning, he stood composed and unflinching, Rowena steadfastly beside him. Theron spoke with calm authority, acknowledging the truth openly for the first time. "Years ago, I lost someone deeply important to me, Alina Harper. Her death devastated me, and while accusations against me are lies, they contain fragments of painful truth. Alexander Vaughn has targeted me relentlessly, and Eliza Harlow was complicit in his scheme. My marriage to Rowena Harlow began under complicated circumstances, but it became very real. Together, we'll fight these false allegations. My conscience is clear, and the truth will prevail. Rowena took Theron's hand openly, boldly, affirming their unity publicly. Cameras flashed, whispers spread, but Theron's defiant honesty gradually shifted public opinion. Reporters scrambled to investigate Vaughn and Eliza further, revealing deeper manipulations. Days later, authorities uncovered definitive proof of Vaughn's illegal activities, corporate espionage, bribery, and even evidence linking him to Alina's tragic death. Warrants were issued swiftly, and Alexander Vaughn fled, now a wanted man. Eliza, suddenly abandoned, was forced into hiding, disgraced publicly for her betrayal. Theron's vindication was swift, though scars remained. Reinhold Innovation stood resilient, regaining stability. But Theron himself, now cleared legally and publicly, felt profoundly changed by the ordeal. He no longer sought validation from power alone, his bond with Rowena had transformed him irrevocably. One quiet evening afterward, as they stood overlooking the city from their penthouse, Rowena gently touched Theron's face, eyes soft with love and understanding. "It's over now," she whispered. Theron drew her close, gazing deeply into her eyes, emotion raw and honest. "Not quite," he said softly. "I still owe you a proper life, a peaceful one, free from shadows." Rowena smiled warmly, shaking her head gently. "I don't need perfect peace. I just need you." Theron exhaled deeply, finally allowing himself a faint, genuine smile. "Then you have me, completely, forever. Whatever comes next, we face it together." Standing there, safely wrapped in Theron's arms, Rowena finally felt truly secure. Though they'd fought darkness and betrayal, their love had emerged unbreakable, forged stronger through trials. They'd survived scandal, loss, and heartache, now united by unshakable trust, resilience, and genuine devotion. As stars illuminated the city skyline beyond, Rowena knew their battle had ended. Together, she and Theron would rebuild their lives, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever future lay ahead, finally free from secrets, united by a love powerful enough to overcome anything. After months of turmoil, the calm that finally settled over Theron and Rowena's lives felt almost surreal. As autumn surrendered gracefully to winter, Manhattan became a glittering wonderland, blanketed in crisp white snow and illuminated by a million twinkling holiday lights. For the first time since they'd met, Rowena felt truly at peace, no longer haunted by the shadows of secrets, betrayals, or threats. With Alexander Vaughn on the run and Eliza's betrayal fully exposed, Theron had reclaimed his reputation, though the scars of scandal lingered. Yet, instead of bitterness, he embraced the opportunity for renewal, grateful for the woman at his side whose loyalty had stood unshakably through every storm. One snowy December morning, Rowena woke slowly, blinking sleepily in the soft winter sunlight filtering through their bedroom window. Warmth surrounded her, Theron's strong arms holding her securely. She smiled contentedly, turning gently to face him. "Good morning," he murmured softly, his gray eyes open and already fixed tenderly on her. His dark hair was tousled charmingly, a rare, genuine smile softening his usually intense features. "Morning," she whispered, feeling warmth spread deliciously through her chest. "You're awake early." "I couldn't sleep," Theron admitted gently, brushing her cheek with his fingertips. "I've been thinking." "About what?" Rowena asked softly, sensing a new seriousness in his expression. Theron hesitated briefly, gathering his thoughts carefully. "About how much we've been through. And how far we've come." His eyes searched hers deeply, vulnerability visible beneath his calm exterior. "I want to give you something I couldn't properly give you before." She tilted her head slightly, curious. What do you mean? Theron slowly sat up, reaching toward the bedside drawer, withdrawing a small velvet box. Rowena's heart skipped, pulse quickening. He turned back to her, eyes serious yet deeply affectionate. Rowena, when we married, it was under circumstances neither of us chose. We never had a real wedding, a moment truly ours. I want to marry you again, properly, surrounded only by those who truly care about us. Tears of happiness blurred her vision, heart swelling with overwhelming emotion. Theron, are you proposing to me again? He smiled faintly, gentle humor warming his eyes. Yes, but this time properly, with love, honesty, and commitment. He opened the velvet box, revealing a stunning ring, a delicate sapphire surrounded by diamonds, breathtakingly elegant yet personal. Will you marry me again, Rowena? Emotion choked her briefly before she managed a joyful, tearful nod. Yes, Theron, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring gently onto her finger, sealing their promise with a tender kiss. They lingered in bed a while longer, wrapped comfortably in each other's embrace, envisioning a future now clear of shadows and full of promise. In the weeks that followed, preparations for their wedding, a private ceremony at a beautiful historic estate outside the city, became Rowena's new joy. Instead of lavish spectacle, they chose intimacy and genuine warmth, inviting only their closest friends, Theron's most trusted employees, and Rowena's bookstore co-workers who'd supported her quietly from the beginning. On the day of their wedding, crisp winter air filled the sky, the gentle snow creating an ethereal atmosphere. Rowena stood nervously before a large antique mirror, dressed in a simple yet breathtaking gown of ivory silk and lace. Her golden hair fell softly around her shoulders, accented by a delicate floral crown woven with tiny winter blossoms. She'd never felt so beautiful, so entirely herself. A gentle knock sounded, and Lena stepped inside, smiling warmly. You look absolutely perfect, she said softly, eyes misty with genuine affection. Rowena hugged her friend tightly. Thank you, for everything, Lena. Lena smiled warmly, eyes sparkling. Theron's waiting for you. He's never looked happier. When the music began softly outside, Rowena's heart raced joyfully. With Lena at her side, she stepped outside, taking careful, graceful steps toward the intimate garden ceremony space. Theron stood waiting beneath an elegant arch of evergreen branches intertwined with white roses. His eyes never left Rowena, breath catching visibly as she approached. He wore a classic black tuxedo, perfectly tailored, yet it was the emotion on his face, pure love, tenderness, and quiet reverence, that captured Rowena's heart completely. As she reached him, Theron took her hand gently, eyes soft with adoration. The officiant began speaking, but Rowena barely registered the words, every detail blurred softly, leaving only Theron's warmth, his gentle touch, and his whispered vows. Rowena, Theron began, voice thick with heartfelt sincerity, I never thought I'd find someone who could break through every wall I ever built, someone who would stand fearlessly beside me through every darkness. You've given me a reason to become a better man, a stronger man, someone worthy of your love. I promise from this day forward, to cherish you, protect you, and love you unconditionally, every day of our lives. Tears filled Rowena's eyes, and she took a deep breath, steadying herself to speak clearly. Theron, before you, I believed I was destined to live quietly, hidden and unnoticed. You saw me when no one else did. You showed me how to be brave, how to love fiercely and without fear. With you, I'm home. I promise to love you fully, honestly, and completely, through every challenge and every joy, always. As the officiant finally pronounced them husband and wife, Theron pulled Rowena gently into his embrace, sealing their vows with a tender, lingering kiss. Soft applause echoed warmly from their friends gathered nearby, but the couple barely noticed, lost in their own perfect moment of happiness. Later that evening, beneath a canopy of glowing string lights and softly falling snowflakes, Theron and Rowena danced together, holding each other close. Music played gently, creating a dreamy, romantic atmosphere. Friends chatted quietly, laughter drifting through the intimate gathering. Theron leaned down slightly, whispering softly into Rowena's ear. "Are you happy?" Rowena lifted her gaze to his, eyes sparkling with joy. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible." "Good," Theron murmured softly, brushing his thumb tenderly along her cheek. "Because this is only the beginning. I promise you a lifetime filled with love and happiness." She smiled warmly, eyes glowing softly in the gentle lights. "Then that's all I'll ever need." The night continued gently, laughter and joy mingling effortlessly as their guests celebrated warmly around them. Finally, as the last guests departed, Theron and Rowena stood quietly alone beneath the snowy sky, savoring their peaceful moment of solitude. Theron gently wrapped his coat around Rowena's shoulders, holding her securely as snowflakes softly brushed their faces. He sighed quietly, contentedly. "I never believed I'd find this kind of happiness," he whispered quietly. "You changed everything, Rowena." She smiled warmly, leaning comfortably into his embrace. "You changed my life, too. I'm finally home, with you." They stood silently for a long moment, absorbing the gentle serenity of their new beginning. Their journey, filled with unexpected twists, betrayal, danger, and redemption, had finally brought them to a place of true, profound happiness. Eventually, Theron gently took Rowena's hand, guiding her back toward the warmly lit estate, their future waiting warmly ahead. Snow continued falling gently, blanketing everything around them in pristine, tranquil beauty. Together, they stepped confidently into their future, one defined not by shadows or secrets, but by genuine love, trust, and the powerful bond they'd fought fiercely to create. Their lives, now bound permanently, would undoubtedly face challenges ahead, but both knew, without question, they would weather anything, side by side, forever.